You're in the bullpen. You might want to watch where you're stepping. Here's American Shorthorn Association CEO Monty Souls.
Okay, well, we want to welcome everybody back to the Shorthorn Bullpen. This is Monty Souls, your host today, and we're here at the NCBA in Orlando, Florida. And we're very honored today to have Josh White with us, I think as Senior Director of basically sustainability and producer education. So, Josh, tell us a little bit about where you come from and what you do and what's involved here, because I think the folks don't understand we got people like you working for us at NCBA.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, Monty. Always a pleasure to visit with cattle folk anytime. I'm basically an overgrown cattle nerd. Grew up in Georgia in the southeast with a family farm there, and my sister says I went cattle crazy around 12. So, and I haven't recovered yet, basically. Okay. So, grew up raising cattle and animal science degree, worked in a family business for a while, and then realized that I was spending more time volunteering for breed associations and Georgia Cattlemen and the Farm Bureau and everything else than I was working. So I sort of got recruited to apply for an open position at Georgia Cattlemen, worked there for about 5.5 years, got that job, and I've been at NCBA working on producer education and sustainability for about 10 years now. Some of our largest programs would be like beef quality assurance, which is checkoff funded. Some of our team also works on the Masters of Beef Advocacy, a lot of folks may be familiar with, which is just what it says. It's a spokesperson training platform and trying to help people better represent the industry, and it's a great online module. And then there's other advanced training once you get through that material that support spokesperson training. So those are some of the checkoff funded things we work on day in and day out. And then on the policy funded side or sponsored side, we're here at the Cattle Industry Convention, and one of the premier education events we've done for many years is the Cattlemen's College, sponsored by Zoetis. Before that it was Pfizer. We've been doing it for well over 30 years. Our team puts that together in cooperation with, both breeders and cattle people that are experts and subject matter experts from land-grant universities and breed associations, and we build up a stew of great content and have usually 700, 800, 1,000 folks sign up for Cattlemen's College at convention, depending on the year, and stockmanship and stewardship programs similar to that, but we run that all around the country. So those are a few of the programs we work on day in and day out.
You're really a man of many talents because you're doing a lot of different things through the sustainability and the education of beef cattle producers. But I think one of the areas that, as producers, we really seem to overlook sometimes, and that's going to be that relationship that we need to have with our consumer that's going to eat the beef.
That's right.
And so the animal welfare, those things as we look forward. So let's rub the crystal ball a little bit and talk about those areas that you see and your team sees as really important that we address as producers going forward for survival and sustainability.
It's a fast-paced world out there. It's rapidly changing, and I know most producers are not in a metropolitan area and aren't around a whole lot of metro consumers, but that's where most of the consumers live these days. So there is a bit of a disconnect, between that rural ag production base and the consumers in these metropolitan areas. The Beef Checkoff funds a lot of consumer market research through NCBA's consumer market research team, and we're privy to a lot of that information and try to work off of a lot of that information. So it's very interesting. They've released some info here at Cattle Industry Convention, and of course K-State, the guys, the Ag Econ team there does a great job as well, putting their fingers on the pulse of consumers. So a lot of different data sources we look at, but we know, number one, consumers want a safe, delicious, somewhat affordable at least, and convenient product. That's number one. I mean, they like the health and the safety benefits of beef, high protein and delicious, and that's what reigns supreme. When we ask them, hey, what do you think about how cattle are raised? The number one response through all these different folks that are talking to consumers always comes up animal welfare. Even when we ask specifically about sustainability, the number one response still is animal welfare, because they really don't understand sustainability. They really don't understand how cattle are raised, the average consumer. So what they really mean is, are you taking good care of the animals? And the good news about that is, when we talk just a little bit about beef quality assurance and the fact that we've got hundreds of thousands of people that have taken the initiative to be BQA certified, it increases their confidence in the beef industry and in how cattle are raised. So BQA is a great answer for people that are asking those questions. And we don't really even have to say BQA. We could say we have a program that focuses on cattle health and welfare, food safety and quality. And they're like, wow, that sounds great, because that means I get a better quality product and it's safe and the cattle are well taken care of. So, you know, we tested that out with consumers about 6 years ago and found out it really resonated. So you'll find a lot more information at Beef It's What's for Dinner, which is the flagship brand of the Checkoff, on those websites around Beef It's What's for Dinner, about BQA and how cattle are raised, than you would have 5 or 6 years ago, because the consumers are curious and it really answers a lot of their questions.
Now let's share with them just very briefly a little bit what that entails. So there may be a few producers that are listening that don't really know what that is, but most people do today because of the promotion that you've done in NCBA, but it's really an important certification that we can keep our product and do the animal welfare, do the right things that we need to do.
That's right. So the Beef Quality Assurance Program's been around a long time. It's over 30 years old now. Started out as beef safety assurance, really feed yard focused, and sort of a food safety model is what it started out as, because feed yards were finding some issues, whether it was injection site lesions or drug residues that were popping in the feed yards back in the 70s and early 80s, and basically they were trying not to get a bunch more regulations. How can we fix this ourselves, basically, and let's create a program ourselves and fix it. And it came from that feed yard sector in some of the feed yard states. And then a few years later, we did the first national beef quality audit. Really, it was a paper called Lost Opportunities first, that Chuck Lambert with NCBA did, really looking at, hey, we're losing market share to chicken at that time, and there's a lot of issues here. What can we fix to satisfy the consumer, and also where are we losing money in the system? And that was really a groundbreaking paper and led to those national beef quality audits, where we're figuring out, again, we ask every 5 or 6 years, what can we be doing better with our end users? So beef quality assurance came out of that. It started out maybe as a little bit of a HACCP model, which is a food safety model, and evolved to what we consider more of a total quality management from a cattle ranching operation perspective, and has expanded to all sectors of the industry. So today, the program looks a lot different. It's really covers anything that could affect cattle welfare, health, and safety, all the way from environmental stewardship and worker safety. Still has a strong herd health component. You can go on our website, bqa.org, and find a local in-person training near you. Most every state offers some in-person education through their usually beef cattle extension or veterinary extension folks. Some states have better, extension resources than others, so we do have an online option available as well for each sector, so cow-calf, stocker backgrounder, or feed yards. And then we've also expanded over to folks that haul a lot of cattle with a BQA transportation certification that's separate.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really understand this transportation issue is huge.
That's right.
to the quality product, and bruises and different things that can happen if you don't take care of that product, right?
Absolutely. We found in this last quality audit, we're losing a lot of value to bruising, and we know we're not going to erase that completely. Cattle are always going to act like fools sometimes and beat up on one another or ride each other or whatnot, but the more we can do to eliminate issues, maybe it's in our facilities, maybe they're scraping their back going through a trailer or through your chute, maybe you're using one of those drop back gates and you like to bump them on the back to keep them moving, that creates a bruise. So we need to be aware of that, and those back bruises, getting that loin, that's very expensive.
It hurts.
That's tough. So I think there's a lot of things we can do. I know a lot of trailer manufacturers are adjusting their sizes, width of gates, and in these big pots, changing how those decks drop down, where they drop down, how those floors interact with coming up out of the bellies and things like that, and making a lot of improvements. But it takes time to replace expensive facilities and equipment.
We had Norm Voiles in here the other day talking with us here at NCBA about the checkoff, and he was explaining that that checkoff dollars go to education, research projects for NCBA. So really a lot of the activities that you can do for research and your education purposes, you're using some checkoff dollars.
Beef quality assurance and the National Beef Quality Audit, as I mentioned, those are both checkoff funded. Of course, for the National Beef Quality Audit, we partner with about a dozen universities that have solid meat science departments to go into those packing plants and collect data, because we are in 30 some odd packing plants collecting data for that quality audit. So again, you can find those results at bqa.org. For the BQA program specifically, we've gone out and secured some sponsorships for things we used to pay for with checkoff dollars, just to try to stretch it further. For instance, our BQA Awards program, we awarded some amazing operations, cow-calf, feed yard, marketer, and educator, and a dairy operation yesterday morning here at Cattle Industry Convention, and Cargill and Sam's Club teamed up to sponsor that.
Okay.
And they're excited to support better quality beef and us doing the right thing by our animals, so it works really well. We've partnered with Neogen this year on our stockmanship and stewardship program, so BQA invests some in that. It used to be just a BQA program funded, but our dollars don't go as far as they used to, so we work with a partner to help us amplify our effort to go around the country training stockmanship and things. So that's another great program producers should check out, stockmanshipandstewardship.org. You can find where we're coming to a state near you, hopefully.
This is, to me, the interesting level of, you've got a great title, Senior Executive Director, so you've got to have a team underneath you.
Absolutely.
And how many people are on your team?
So there are 12 of us that work on these projects. We haven't even talked about a lot of the sustainability work we do that's not checkoff funded on my team. But about half of the team works on BQA day in and day out. And we also have a webinar series we've been doing for years, even before webinars were cool. And that's free for anyone. You don't have to be an NCBA member. Stockmanship and stewardship that we tour around the country, there is a fee for that, but it's the same whether you're a member or not. We're trying to serve the industry as best we can. And of course, BQA, online modules, all that content is free. And then we've got folks that work on sustainability work. NCBA released some sustainability goals just a few years ago at convention.
So you say you're a cattle nerd when we started this, and you love it. I can tell you love it. But I don't think that folks understand when they say you're the executive director, senior executive director, in fact, that you're talking about. I mean, you sent me a little resume and a page of the things you do, and it's 2 pages, folks, of a paragraph of all the different. You've got a lot of things going on.
We do.
On a daily basis at NCBA that I don't know if a lot of people understand what their membership dues are going for, but these are the things that we get from being a member of NCBA and what is happening with NCBA for producers. You mentioned dairy cattle earlier. A lot of that dairy cattle ends up as beef.
That's right.
They're cattle producers too.
That's right.
So we don't need to extract them from our business or from our association. They're a big part of it.
And we work a lot with the dairy industry. About 7 or 8 years ago, we realized our penetration with the BQA dairy program was not very good. Dairy producers really didn't want to hear from a bunch of beef guys how to raise their dairy cattle. I know that's a big surprise, because I know all of our beef guys want to hear from dairy guys how to raise beef cattle. When we brought the BQA modules in-house at NCBA, about the same time we worked with the National Milk Producers Federation on a newer program they had at the time called the National Dairy Farm Program, and we made sure somebody from our team was on their technical writing group, and we brought our BQA content to them and said, hey, if you can get the basics on food safety and welfare into your program that we want from BQA, we'll just recognize it as an equivalent. because you've got the audience at dairy. They don't want to hear from us, and that's worked out great. We still have a great partnership with them. They're actually here with us at Cattle Industry Convention in our booth. We have a joint booth promoting our new calf care and quality assurance program that we developed jointly for the calf feeding sector. We know that there's a lot more calf ranches feeding these beef on dairies, and so we built a whole new platform similar to BQA just for that sector, jointly with the National Milk Producers Federation.
It's important to service that end of things. So
absolutely,
I think one of the things that I become very interested in visiting with you before we sit here and go on the air and during this conversation is your passion, but what is really going on. And so before we close up here, give me an idea of anything else you'd like to share with our folks out there that are listening today about NCBA, because we're here at probably the largest cattle group as we get together once a year here at NCBA Convention and Trade Show. And we really, I think we're talking to membership out here, we're talking to producers.
Right.
We just need to really share with them some of the things that are going on, just bigger, because it's bigger than any one person or bigger than any one group, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think, our team's heart is to serve the cattle industry, and I think that's pervasive throughout NCBA. And we're on staff, but we're directed by volunteer leaders that are cattle producers. That's our board of directors, whether it's the federation side, which is checkoff, or the policy side. Those are cattle producers that come from the states, from the grassroots right up here to make policy and to do work and to serve the checkoff on all of the checkoff committees that help direct the BQA program, the Masters of Beef Advocacy program, the research programs. We present all of our program work to producers and get their feedback twice a year. And of course they call us up in between too, and we take that feedback. So the other thing I would just like to reiterate back to BQA is there's a team of folks around the country at these land grants or vet schools or at your state cattlemen's or beef council that are supporting BQA in your state. And they do a great job delivering really good content in person too, so it's another good option to get BQA certified, and it's a partnership. I don't do a lot on the political side because we're in Denver, and we are mainly focused on education and how do we move the industry forward, but obviously NCBA's policy division's working hard every day for our membership, again, producer directed to try to protect our interests in DC. One quick story, I shared this the other day at a grazing workshop we were doing. Through my work on sustainability, I've gotten to meet folks around the world through the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and some folks from New Zealand that I'd met were coming to the National Western Stock Show last month and said, hey, why don't we meet up for lunch and talk, and they had somebody that works on sustainability for them in New Zealand with them, and one of the first things they said is how amazing it is to come to the U.S. and see a positive attitude about how agriculture can be part of the solution on these climate issues. Because in New Zealand, they're telling them to sell and kill the livestock and plant trees.
Yeah.
And agriculture's the enemy. And so I think we have a lot to be thankful for. I know we like to fuss and fight and argue, and that's okay. We're a democracy, and we can all have our opinion, but we've got a lot to be thankful for. We've got amazing natural resources, our extension service, organizations like the Shorthorn Association, IGS, NCBA, people that want to help you out in the country be successful.
And what you said is a mouthful. I've been to Australia and I've been to England here in the last year for our World Shorthorn Conference, and we don't really realize what's going on in the rest of the world as we get protected inside of our own borders. Because of some of the actions that NCBA's taken, what you do and what your team does, we do have an advantage over some of the activities that are going on.
That's right.
And when I was in England last year, it was almost dumbfounded the impact that those producers have to live under and the rules and regulations to survive.
And part of the reason we don't have them is programs like Beef Quality Assurance that are producer owned. We have an advisory group of producers and subject matter experts, meatheads and PhDs and veterinarians that help as well. Folks from every sector of the industry that help inform our deal. And it's not regulatory. We're not the police. It's an education-based program, BQA is, and it's producer owned and directed. So that's helped us fend off a lot of things like the these other countries have to deal with from a regulatory perspective.
No, it's true. And your passion for your job, your passion for the industry, your passion for the people in it shows here, and it shows the results that we've seen in the 10 years that you've been there and what you've worked with NCBA.
Well, thanks, Monty. We're going to keep trying to do better every day.
It'll be, I mean, you talk about being a nerd. I gotta say this, because this is what come to my mind when you said being a nerd. I gotta share what my wife always told me. She says if I had a tail and knew how to swish it and go moo, I'd get a whole lot more attention from you. So maybe we're all nerds and we just don't really realize it.
That's right.
So with that, I want to sign off here. This is Monty Souls with the Shorthorn Bullpen. We want to thank Josh White from NCBA, our host today, and till next time, we'll see you later.